Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, it's a rainy, stormy day here. You can probably hear the rain falling on the metal roof of this building and maybe even a little thunder in the background because it's coming down pretty good. And, well, that's a good thing for us. And I know that many of the folks in this country are dealing with extreme droughts, and we've talked about that. But I was also reading that there's other areas that are dealing with too much rain. In fact, up in Iowa and places up towards Minnesota, it's so wet there they can't plant. And I was reading the other day that they estimate they've only got about 7% of the corn in the ground. They normally have somewhere between 36 and 40% of the corn in the ground at this time of the year. Those farmers are hoping for a dry week next week because it's just nasty rain all this week. And that they can maybe get some more food planted, because the way things are looking, as we've talked about, it's not looking like a really great year when it comes to harvesting the amount of food that's needed due to all the complications that are going on around the world. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Here to talk about a few different things that are going on that it's all connected, because I believe it's just all part of this great reset plan. I mean, you know, we've talked about this so many times. I've used that phrase more times than I can count. The Great Reset. Have you ever actually thought about what a reset does? Have you thought about that? It's not improving things. That's not what a reset does. A reset doesn't make something better than what it was. A reset takes it back down to zero. It has to crash it. It has to completely bring it down to nothing, and then it starts over again. That's what a reset is. Now, you could make the argument, well, that's not exactly what they're wanting to do, but why would they use that terminology? And when you look at their plans and you hear what they're doing and see what they're doing, maybe bringing things back down to zero is their plan. And I'm not so much arguing that that's a bad thing. We've gotten so far off course as a society that maybe we do need a reset, just not in the form that they want. And to go along with that, well, of course, they're furthering this agenda of transhumanism. I haven't talked about that in a while, but it certainly is a big issue. This is really part of their plan. I mean, if you've watched any of the stuff from Klaus Schwab, he's talked about that within 10 years that we all have brain chips in our heads, these microchips planted in our head to where we can all connect. We don't have to even talk or listen. The microchips connect to each other, and we can hear each other's thoughts and know each other's emotions. I mean, I'm not making this up. You can go look it up online. Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, has flat out said that. Well, today is a big bumper day, a big day for transhumanism and the Great Reset, because the first company producing those brain chips that I just spoke of is gone into clinical human trials with theirs. They got approval from the FDA. It's not the one that Elon Musk is making. His is a different company, and this is a competitor company, and theirs has gone into human trials, which means it's getting closer and closer to actually happening, folks. By all possibilities, within a year or so, you could very well possibly see people walking around with chips implanted into their brains. And there, of course, will be this encouragement to do so, just probably in the same way that everyone saw this encouragement to get this. I'm sure it'll all be connected in some way. But I just wanted to share that with you to let you know that their whole agenda of transhumanism and this fourth industrial revolution, it's a real thing, and they're moving forward with it while you're being distracted by all the stuff that's going on. Speaking of that, and talking back about the food issue, Shanghai, China, we've talked about that many times, of how they've locked down that whole port, and that's the largest shipping port on the planet, the whole world, the largest. A lot of stuff comes in and out of there, and Shanghai is a major production manufacturing city, and they've locked that city down, and it has been for about a month or so. But there's some new cities being locked down, and some of these cities that are now being locked down, these are major producers of steel and coal. And, you know, a lot of Americans might say, well, those are American things. We can produce that. That doesn't matter. Have you looked lately to see how much steel America produces? It's not very much. If you think back in American history, kind of in the 19th century, the train, that was the thing that led America. You know, the advent and the creation of the train and the railway system, that really made America during that time period and sped up our advancement. And in the 20th century, it really was steel. Steel was the thing. Americans were known far and wide for their quality steel. Not anymore, though. They control a large market of steel. And now all of a sudden, they're locking down one of the biggest cities that they have and ports that produces and ships all that steel. So the point is the coming supply chain collapse, which is probably going to be hitting us by summer. I think it's going to be a real thing. I cannot imagine how we're not going to feel some pretty strong effects by this, especially looking back at what we went through a year and a half, 2 years ago, when China locked themselves down, and how much it just caused this bottleneck of problems in our supply chain and our own ports. And looking back at what they did then, it was nothing compared to what they're doing now. And they weren't locking down areas that are more important. The areas that they're locking down right now are much more important to international trade and ports than ships that are coming to America than it was the first time around. So I suspect we're going to have a repeat of what we went through the first time during the early beginnings of the health crisis, just amplified a lot worse. We're seeing this frenzy and craziness over there in China, and even by their accounts, you know, whatever the variant that's going around isn't that bad. There's not been that many deaths from it, but they're still going crazy. And I just cannot believe that it's because the Chinese government and the people are so fearful and naive that they would destroy their own economy and do all this just because they're afraid of something like that. I'm pretty sure there's a reason for it, and I think it's to hurt us worse than to hurt them. And of course, time will tell, and we'll see if that's correct or not. But I think that we will definitely feel the pain of what they're doing. Now, shifting gears a little bit and moving to this whole the whole Supreme Court potential ruling and the fallout from that. Yesterday, I made a video talking about are we headed towards a civil war because of this? And I've talked about civil war in the past. And I think every time something like this happens, we're inching ourselves closer and closer to that day. We live in a society that is far more divided than we've ever been. I mean, we put ridiculous labels on everything and everybody, and we're hyper divided. In fact, it's almost like a badge of honor anymore that we divide ourselves and point out the radical differences between ourselves and someone else, instead of acknowledging that we're in the end very much the same. There is no unity, and there's no community left in America, or at least most of America. And because of all that and the hyper divisiveness, something like this overturning of Roe v. Wade could very well push us over the edge. We're already seeing violence happen. There's already been protests, and some of those protests have turned violent. And it seems, at least based on what we're hearing online, that the intent is to keep this up and to make it even worse. What does that mean for us? It means that this could be a new phase of America, another step towards this great reset. You know, with what's going on overseas with Russia, with China, and now the very likelihood that we could see more widespread violence here in the United States, at least on the level of what we had 2 years ago with the BLM protests and riots. It could very much cause a lot of disruption and just chaos. And that, in the end, I think that's their real goal. They want to have chaos. They want to see this nation falling apart in chaos. Because when we do that, then we're going to be more open-armed and accepting of their radical Great Reset New World Order plans. I mean, Americans aren't going to hand over our sovereignty and our liberty to this globalist, concept if everything's going great. It doesn't make sense. Why would we do that? Well, things are great here. I mean, we don't really need that. We're doing fine. But if things aren't going very well, if things are falling apart and chaotic, and there's chaos and crisis around every corner, then Americans are going to be more inclined to listen to these ridiculous globalist ideas and say, you know what, it may not be too bad, because we certainly aren't figuring things out very well for ourselves. This capitalism and this freedom and liberty and all that kind of stuff ain't working very good for us anymore. Maybe we need some of this, World Economic Forum, United Nations Great Reset, because what we have just isn't working anymore. So they have to create lots and lots of chaos. And that's not even something that's even that big of a conspiracy anymore. I think you can just look all around us and you can see that that's happening. I mean, today I saw that the president made this statement that the MAGA crowd is the most dangerous group that America has ever had. And he actually said that they are a very dangerous threat to America. And you add to that with the whole Department of Homeland Security and their threat level warnings, and then now with this new disinformation governance board, it's starting to sound like to me that the whole Orwellian 1984 scenario is really starting to come into being, and you and I and people like us, whether you voted for Trump or not, are going to be classified as true threats to this nation. We're not headed down a very good path, folks. I don't know how anyone could see any otherwise. Even if we're not headed down in such an extreme way as that I kind of talk about, the fact is we're not headed in a good way, in a good direction. And so the bottom line is that you and I need to be getting ready. We need to be preparing ourselves, not just by stacking, beans. That's important. You need to be putting away as much food as you can, and you need to be preparing to grow and produce and preserve as much food as you can. You need to also be working on your personal defense, because with all the stuff going on, you might really need it. You need to be finding yourself living as much as possible in a place as far away from all the radical stuff that you can get, and as much as possible living around people that are more like you, and making connections and building relationships and community and tribe with those people, because in the end, that's going to be one of the best ways that you can survive all of this. You need to be working on your the mental strengthening of dealing with living in a different world. I think Americans have been so coddled and so just living in a world that's so easy for so long, that most Americans just could not wrap their heads around living in a nightmare scenario like, Bosnia or something like that. And it's very possible that we may eventually someday reach that point, at least in some areas in this country. And so we have to get into that battle mindset, that warrior mindset, the world that we live in is forever going to change. It already has. It already has forever changed. And it's just happening around us little by little. And so we have to get ourselves ready mentally for that, mentally, psychologically. And then finally, and very important, most important, is to strengthen ourselves spiritually. You may not all believe how I do, and that's fine. But there are more and more people waking up and realizing that there is a spiritual darkness over this nation. There is very much a spiritual warfare going on. And you may be prepped in so many other ways, but if your spiritual walk is not prepared to deal with the darkness that's being thrown at us, you may not survive it. So certainly put a lot of emphasis when it comes to preparations in the way of preparing your soul for what's going on, because there is a true darkness happening. There's a real battle. We are already at war, folks. We may not be at war with bullets and tanks, but we are at war for the hearts and minds of children. We are at war for the very foundations of morality in this country. There is a spiritual war against anything that's good, against anything that is godly, anything that is righteous, and they're not even hiding that anymore. We need to get ready for that, folks. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.